Welcome to MMA on the Rocks. My name is Bill Welker. You are listening to episode 293. Unless you're joining me live on Facebook, Twitter, or YouTube, or maybe all three. I don't know. I don't know how many devices you have in your household. I'd be interested to know if you can watch all three at once and maybe which one has more of a delay. I would think YouTube would be the most delayed, and I feel like Twitter would be the fastest. I don't know. But if you want to catch the show live, make sure you're subscribed on one or all of those channels. Turn on your notifications. Today is Monday, September 19th, for those keeping track. A day later than the show normally is. Just got caught up with some personal things yesterday, so didn't have time to get on here and talk to all you lovely folks about all the beautiful violence we witnessed this weekend at UFC Vegas 60, UFC Fight Night 210. Before we get into that, Mark Fellows knows the answer. It's Twitter, YouTube, Facebook in that order. That's kind of what I thought. If I had to guess, that's how I would have ranked it. But that actually makes sense. I don't know why I would think that Twitter would be the fastest, because Twitter's not like a streaming site, and the other two are known for streaming, but I don't know. I just feel like Twitter has shit figured out that other platforms haven't. Before we get into the fights, I do want to bring up one piece of bad news that I heard, unfortunately, right after I finished recording last week's show, and that was the tragic passing of former UFC fighter Elias Theodorou. What can you say? 34 years old is way too young for anybody, professional athlete or anyone. Just such a tragedy for his family to have lost him so young. I never met him or interacted with him, but we ran in some of the same circles, and a lot of the same things that I'm sure you guys have been hearing for the past week. Nobody had a bad word to say about the guy. He came through and trained here at Gracie Tampa a few times with some good friends of mine, and they said he was just all class. He came in, he was very respectful. He was willing to learn, which is not something that you see from high level mixed martial artists. They don't go and just pop into gyms and are willing to, be a blank slate, so to speak. But that's the impression I got from him. He came in and he was willing to help people who needed help, and was also willing to listen to people he hardly knew, and that's really a sign of greatness. People who are humble enough to know that they can learn from others. Renzo Gracie always said that a white belt can teach him in the same way that he can teach a white belt. Because they have a fresh perspective, their minds haven't been polluted with jujitsu theology for years and years. But big loss for this community. It's really sad. Elias was a big advocate for legalizing cannabis and MMA. Coming from Canada, it's something that's legal there, and he was taking it as medicine to treat, I believe it was a degenerative muscle disease that he had in his hand. And I think that was part of the reason he stepped away from the UFC, is that he couldn't get an exemption to be able to take his marijuana for his condition. So he was he was one of the pioneers of that movement, which luckily now fighters can use marijuana up until so many days before the fight. Maybe that'll change someday in the near future. Maybe they'll be able to use it like the day before or something like that. But yeah, let's raise a glass to Elias and he left us a lot of great memories, a lot of great fights, winning the Ultimate Fighter, and hopefully his work towards legalizing cannabis will resonate, and somebody else will pick up the torch there. So, cheers, Elias. Thoughts are with your family. All right. Well, I guess we'll keep rolling with the bad news. Jose Aldo officially retired from MMA, coming off his loss to Moroz Fili. I didn't think he looked bad, but I think maybe Jose realized, this bantamweight division, as we saw on Saturday night, it's just stacked with so much talent. That for him to make another run at the title is probably going to take another few years. And Aldo is one of these guys. I think he's only like 34 or 35 years old, but he's been fighting for 49 years somehow. Like, Aldo's been around a long time. Some of you may remember him back in the WEC when he was just murdering people. I remember when he knocked out Cub Swanson with a double flying knee. I think it gave him black eyes in both eyes at once, and then he jumped over the cage and ran all the way up the stands. Aldo was just a wild man back in the day. He calmed down quite a bit before even arriving in the UFC. And then, of course, he had a legendary run in the UFC, which was kind of derailed by Conor McGregor and then twice by Max Holloway. Yeah, so I don't know what to say about that one, except, man, Aldo gave us some incredible fights, some wars. He really did. I mean, his fights with Uriah Faber, legendary. So many great memories. Like, I mean, what he did to Uriah Faber's leg made people have nightmares about leg kicks. I don't know if you guys remember that, but he beat up Uriah Faber's leg so bad with the leg kicks. His leg was swollen to twice the size. It was completely purple. It was pretty gross. We saw some gross things on Saturday night as well. We'll get into all that, but yeah, let's raise another one to the career of Jose Aldo, King of Rio. Thanks for all the memories. Your fights are going to live on in history. So thank you, champ. Cheers. All right, let's talk some fights. So as I said, this bantamweight division, and I was talking about this a little bit last week, it's so top heavy right now. And now you've got, you have two guys coming off a main event, and neither one of their stock goes down, in my opinion, but Cory Sandhagen's stock goes up quite a bit. He just fought such a smart fight against Yadong Song. And this is something, fight IQ is a term that's thrown around a lot. I don't really care for that term because it makes it sound like it makes it sound like if you're not intelligent, like you can't get good at this, when some people just have good instincts and athletic gifts. It's really just, I think it just comes down to experience, and that could be combined with experience outside of mixed martial arts. So, kickboxing experience, grappling experience, experience within the gym, just being able to meet adversity and change gears, change directions. It's really a rare skill if you think about it. This is very much a sport where we see a lot of people crack if things aren't going their way. The hardest thing for fighters to deal with a lot of the times is when they get into a fight and the fight is more difficult than they anticipated it being. So if they get in there thinking they're going to outstrike a guy and they're getting tagged up, that causes panic for a lot of people. It didn't with Cory Sandhagen because he got outstruck in the first round. I think Yadong Song won that first round handily. He hit Sandhagen with some hard shots. I don't think anybody would disagree that Song won that first round. And Sandhagen realized he just didn't have the weapons to go blow for blow with him with the punches and kicks. So he went to the elbows. He was also missing with those flying knees quite a bit. That I believe he knocked out Marlon Moraes with. But yeah, he went to the elbows. So, Cory Sandhagen might have been fighting down in the rankings, but he was throwing those elbows up into Yadong Song's face. One of them causing the cut that would eventually end the fight at the end of the fourth round. It was just great experience, great adjustments on the fly. Realizing that whatever his primary game plan wasn't working, and he was able to change it up and do enough damage to end the fight. And credit to Yadong Song, man. What a tough dude. I mean, his face was half hanging off. He looked like Leatherface from the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, or just like half his eyebrow was over here and half his eyebrow was down here. It was like the scarecrow from the Wizard of Oz. Like, they threw half my face over here and half my face was over here. It was pretty gruesome. It was a really bad cut. It was in a really bad place. And you got to give credit to the doctor in this fight, as well as in the co-main event as well, between Chidi Njokuani and Gregory Rodrigues. The doctor really did his best in both scenarios to try and let these fights go on as long as possible. And Yadong Song had that cut over his eye. I believe it happened in the second round. And this fight was stopped at the end of the fourth. A lot of doctors might have stopped it like after that second round, right when they saw the location of that cut. Right over the eye is the worst place because the blood will trickle down into your eyes and then you can't see. What was happening with him was he actually had like a flap of his eyebrow that was hanging over his eye. And I imagine it had to be impairing his vision at least a little bit. And he slowed down a lot. You could tell it was bothering him. But he was still in the fight. Like, if they would have let it go to the fifth round, like, he would have been in there swinging to the end, which is why his stock doesn't go down at all for me. I'm sure it was a difficult stitch job. It's going to leave a nasty scar. You can see here, he's a good looking dude, very symmetrical face. Like, when this photo was taken, from here on out, not so much. It's going to be a little more Picasso-esque going forward. But hey, chicks dig scars, right? Yeah, just a great performance. Sandhagen, I think he only was successful with one takedown. And then the narrative coming out of this was that he wasn't shooting the takedowns to get Yadong Song to the ground. He was shooting the takedowns to tire his arms out. And I can only get on board with that theory so much, even though that's what Cory said at the end of the fight too. He said the goal was not to take him down. The goal was just to tie him up, get his arms full of blood, get his arms tired, take some of the power off his shots. But I can't ignore the entries on these takedowns where Sandhagen was bending at the waist instead of changing levels. Even if you're not intending to take the guy down, it's never a good idea to just bend at the waist to shoot on someone. Because it lowers your face. It leaves you open for dangerous strikes like knees and uppercuts and things like that. And you never want to have a rounded back when you're going in on a takedown, even if you're not planning to finish it, even if you're trying to get into the clinch, you still want to maintain good posture. That would be my only criticism of Sandhagen's performance. And it's not a big one by any means, but just as a grappler and as a clinch coach, it was something I noticed, that he was coming in rounded on those takedown attempts. And hey, what do I know? Like, obviously whatever he was doing worked. He slowed down Yadong Song and, came away with a really big win. This was a huge position for him because he's coming off 2 losses, I think. And he was fighting down in the rankings because he couldn't get a fight. I think the next logical thing to me is to do Sandhagen versus Chito Vera. I think that's an outstanding fight. If this fight can be a main event, then Sandhagen versus Chito Vera can be a main event. And the winner of that should face TJ Dillashaw, and the winner of TJ Dillashaw and Aljamain Sterling. The problem there for Sandhagen is that he has losses to both of those guys. He got blown out of the water by Sterling, which, you could say was a fluke or whatever you want to say about it. And then the fight with Dillashaw, a lot of people thought Sandhagen won. So that would be like, if Sandhagen were to get through Chito Vera, he would probably be rooting for TJ Dillashaw, I would think, because it would be easier. It would be an easier path to that title shot. Like, it's hard to sell the fight with Aljamain Sterling after the way the first one went. He would have to have a really impressive performance over Chito Vera, which, let's face it, people don't have impressive performances over Chito Vera. But that fight excites me. I think that fight is great. And of course, we can't ignore the boogeyman, Moroz Dvalishvili, that's still sneaking around this division. He won't fight his teammate Algeo, but you got to give him a top guy. And then you also have, a lot of people are talking about Sandhagen or Vera getting the next title shot. Nobody's talking about the fact that, Peter Yan was a year ago like the hottest thing in this division. And then when he lost the rematch to Aljamain Sterling, he just kind of faded. Now he's fighting a guy in Sean O'Malley, who I don't think is even ranked in the top 10. So the guy goes from fighting for the title to fighting a guy that's like basically not ranked. But what do you do with Peter Yan? What do you do if he just goes down and obliterates Sean O'Malley? Do you not give him the title fight? Peter Yan versus TJ Dillashaw will be a fun fight. I don't think anybody's looking for Peter Yan, Aljamain Sterling 3. I think everybody is just kind of over that whole mess. I don't think we want to relive any of it. So yeah, what do you do there? Do you make Yan fight Moroz? That would be a fun fight too. Put that on the same card. Sandhagen and Chito Vera on the same card as Moroz and Peter Yan. That's assuming that Yan beats O'Malley, which I don't know. I don't want to say that's a foregone conclusion, but I mean, on paper, he should, right? I mean, O'Malley's good. He's crafty. He's got a solid ground game. He's got knockout power. But has Yan ever been close to getting knocked out? Not that I know of. Not off the top of my head anyway. So not a bad problem to have if you're the UFC. Like I said, this division is very top heavy right now. And then, once Yadong Song heals up, who's not going to want to see that guy fight again? He promises blood and guts when he gets in there. So what's not to love there? So, all right, guys. Mark Fellows says, if O'Malley beats Yan, I'm dyeing my bald head pink. Now I'm kind of rooting for O'Malley. I want to see this. I want to see photos, pics, or it didn't happen. All right, let's talk about an even more gruesome cut, in my opinion. Gregory Rodrigues and Chidi Njokuani. This fight was so fun. And this is another example of good fight experience, fight IQ, whatever you want to call it. Because Gregory Rodrigues, for those who don't know, world-class Brazilian jiu-jitsu practitioner. And Chidi Njokuani has a black belt in jiu-jitsu, I believe. But Gregory Rodrigues is one of these guys who's like just on another level. But you might not know that because he never chooses to implement it in his game plans when he's in there. So decides to stand and bang with Chidi Njokuani, which, if you've ever seen Chidi fight, is not a great idea for anybody. Takes a clean knee right between the eyes and just makes his eyebrow line go from here to here. He was looking like Bert from Sesame Street at the end of this thing. It was gruesome. And the cut just opened up. And the doctor, again, credit to this doctor. I'm not sure of his name, but he did a great job and then Rodrigues realized, like, oh shit, if I don't get out of this round, or if I make it out of this round, or if I let Chidi out of this round, they're probably going to stop this on the stool. Like, he probably felt his face opening up. It was like a cavern opening up on his face. It was pretty grotesque. So he had to know. He had to feel that happening, like his face was being ripped in half. So he takes Chidi down, gets the TKO. I think it was more exhaustion on the part of Njokuani. It seemed like he just tried so hard to finish Rodrigues in that first round. And he does tend to fade. He's a fast twitch muscle guy. So all these explosive movements, he has had, tiny issues with cardio in the past because of the way he fights. And it makes for really exciting fights and really spectacular knockouts. But then it also results in him running out of gas, which is, I think, what happened here. So Rodrigues takes it to the ground, passes his guard easily, and then finishes him with punches. But I don't think he was close to knocking him out or anything. Again, I think he was just tired. I want to take a look. Let's take a look at the cut here, because the reason I say this one was so much more gruesome than the Yadong song cut is because, and those of you watching the video right now, I have the photo pulled up here, is because of this artery that was exposed that's basically between the eye and the bridge of the nose, but up near the eyebrow. And it is called the supratrochlear artery. And that is courtesy of the Octagon doctor, Dr. Yared Vasquez on Twitter. You could follow him at Dr. Yared. And he basically said if this artery had been ruptured, we would have seen the biggest in-fight bleed in UFC history. And I believe it, because if you look at this thing, and those of you who are audio only, just, I guess, Google the picture of Gregory Rodrigues' cut. But this artery, it's huge. It's like the size of a number 2 pencil. It's also known, I believe, in the medical field as the stripper pole artery, because it just looks like a big stripper pole that goes down his forehead and like ends in his sinus cavity somewhere. But this thing's like totally exposed. If that knee had gone just a hair deeper, and it ruptured this thing, he would have been bleeding all over the place, all over the audience and the judges and the commentators and everybody. They would have had to stitch this artery shut and then stitch his face shut. And the cut is bad enough on its own. Like, Henry Cejudo could use this cut as a sleeping bag. This thing, I mean, this was a gash and a half on this dude's forehead. I can't speak enough to the toughness of this guy. When being that he has this giant crater in his face, and he's like, all right, well, I guess I better take this really dangerous striker to the ground finally, and try to finish it there. And maybe if he didn't have the cut, maybe he would have tried to stay standing. Um, but yeah, this artery looks like, from the diagram I'm looking on here that Dr. Yared shared here on Twitter, it looks like it connects directly to the eyeball. So I would imagine if you damage that artery, uh, you could do some damage to your vision as well, which is scary to think, uh, for a fighter. So shout out again to Dr. Yared for sharing his medical knowledge there. But two guys who, for me, their stock doesn't go down, because you have a guy in Gregory Rodrigues who's so tough. His face gets ripped wide open, and he's just like, well, I guess I got to take it to the ground now. I mean, most of us would look at that and be like, oh my God, half of my face is gone in the middle. Uh, and it would not continue. Gregory Rodrigues was like, well, I better change my game plan a little bit before I lose like another third of my face. um, but Njokuani, like, who wouldn't want to see a guy fight again who can knee somebody so hard that it alters the appearance of their face? And also credit to the doctors who stitched up Rodrigues after this fight. They did an awesome job. Um, he's gonna be scarred for life, but at least he won the fight, you know. I guess. So here's my question to you: would you rather have the cut that Yadong's song had, and have more mild, less noticeable scarring because it goes through the eyebrow, and lose the fight? Or would you rather have that gaping, artery exposing gash that Gregory Rodrigues had and had won the fight? So let me know in the comments or on social media or wherever you're watching or listening. What would you choose? Would you rather get songs cut and lose the fight and have it be, probably heal up a little better? Or would you rather endure Rodriguez's cut and walk away with the victory? I'd be curious to see what a lot of you would say. Andre Fili and Bill Algeo. This was, this fight was all Andre Fili, which, I don't think it's any secret about Andre Fili that he's hot and cold. When he shows up, he looks phenomenal, and he can run away with fights against top contenders like he did here. I don't understand the split decision here. I'm sure you guys have heard this, a dozen times by now, but Algeo taking the back, having his back taken, and then throwing these little short punches. It doesn't do any damage, so I don't really see why this one judge would have scored it for Algeo, but I don't know. I would like to hear them explain their case, maybe what they were looking at here. But I think to most of us, this was a clear victory for Andre Fili. Joseph Pfeiffer, first round TKO over Alan Amadovsky. So Pfeiffer coming off the Contender Series, I believe. This guy comes out of Philadelphia, where they just breed tough fighters. If you look at the guys that have come out of Philadelphia, Eddie Alvarez, of course, Paul Felder, amongst others, the Dawkins brothers. There's just there's just the toughness about Philadelphia dudes. And yeah, so he gets the knockout and he gets a bonus on his birthday. So congratulations to him. Rodrigo Nascimento, split decision over Tanner Boser. Don't really have much on that one for you guys. Anthony Hernandez with just a dominant fight over Marc-Andre Barriault. Just bell to bell, dominated this fight up until he ended it with the arm triangle in the third round. Super impressive performance for this guy. Sky's the limit for Anthony Hernandez, in my opinion. Damon Jackson, who came in with a heavy heart, having lost his brother, makes quick work of Pat Sabatini, taps him out due to strikes, minute 9 seconds into the first round. So it's got to be bittersweet for Damon Jackson coming in under the circumstances that he did, and coming away with an impressive victory like this in a fight where I believe he was the underdog. I can't remember the odds off the top of my head, but I have to imagine that he was not favored in this one. Pat Sabatini is a bad dude. So to come in there and dispose of a guy like that in just over a minute, with the emotional baggage that he was bringing into the cage, super impressive on the part of Damon Jackson. Trevin Giles, unanimous decision over Louis Cosce. Let's see, what else? Let's skip around here. Jillian Robertson putting Maria Agapova to sleep. And I heard from people who had trained with Jillian that they kind of knew this is how this one was going to go, because they had trained together and grappled together, of course. So they knew that Jillian would have a big advantage there. So Jillian did seem like a little bit smaller to me, like almost like she could possibly fight down to 115. I don't know if that's something that's on the table for her. She knows her body, so I guess she would know better than anyone if she was able to make that. But yeah, put Maria Agapova to sleep. Great performance from Jillian Robertson. Javid Basharat, unanimous decision over Tony Gravely. This was an impressive performance because Gravely is a tough dude. Another contender series guy, really solid wrestler. He got Basharat down a few times, but Basharat was able to just pop right back up to his feet, stayed in Gravely's face the whole time. So this is a big win for him. He's undefeated, I believe. I can double check on that. Yeah, 13-0. The Snow Leopard. All right. Another contender series guy. It's almost hard to keep up with all these talented fighters that are coming out of the contender series. And then the first fight of the night, Nikolas Motta TKO over Cameron VanCamp, 349 the first round. So this was a pretty solid card. Let's see, what's Bruce whining about here? Next time you see a bad cut in MMA, wash your tears in your whiskey, Bill. Cry me a river. I didn't have a problem with the cuts, actually. I thought they were fine. My only question was, would you rather have Yadong Song's cut and lose the fight, or would you rather have Gregory Rodriguez's cut and win the fight? That was my only question. I don't have any problem with the cuts. You might have missed the part where I showed the photos here of the cuts as well. Let's see. We can take a look ahead. We've got a week off, I believe. October 1st is the next UFC card. That's going to be Mackenzie Dern and Xiaonan Yan, which is a great strawweight fight, I think. But we got time to get into that. We can kind of like browse this card. Cody Garbrandt, I'm not sure who he was even supposed to fight, but as of now, it's unknown fighter. Brendan Allen, Christoph Jocko. It's a really fun fight. Randy Brown, Francisco Trinaldo. Francisco Trinaldo is still doing the damn thing. That's super impressive. Sodiq Yusuff, I guess, last minute replacement. He was supposed to fight, the guy from Georgia with the kicks. What's that guy's name? Somebody help me out here. It'll come to me. But he pulled out. Guido Canetti, Randy Costa, Alexei Olenek, and Ilir Latifi. It's a fun heavyweight match. Yeah, this is going to be a fun little card. So this will be a good one to come back from after. Is it a week off or is it 2 weeks off? I don't know how calendars work. Let's see. All right, 1 week off. So no UFC this weekend. There might be Bellator or some other stuff, but Giga Chikadze. That's the name I was thinking of. Thank you, Mark. Yeah, so Chikadze pulled out against Sodiq Yusuff. I'm not sure the reason. And yeah, now we have a replacement. So not as high profile of a fight for Sodiq Yusuff, but he wants to stay active. So he's got to take whoever's willing to step up there. I think it was a great night of fights. I thought very entertaining. And I noticed there wasn't a lot of buzz about it. Not a lot of people on social media talking about that card, the Sandhagen and Song. And I had a feeling that would be the case coming off of, a Nate Diaz pay-per-view. A lot of people probably took the week off. But, if you just watched the fights, you would have seen some great fights. And then you could take next week off because there's no fights next week. So we're all going to take the week off next week. The other thing I want to touch on briefly that I didn't really care about was Canelo Alvarez and Gennady Golovkin, the third fight. And the reason, a few reasons I didn't really care about this fight. One, because the first fight ending in a draw was one of the final straws for me to stop caring about boxing, a sport that I loved following for a long time. And after that fight, I just did not give a shit because Gennady Golovkin clearly beat Canelo Alvarez in the first fight, and it was judged a draw because of the horrendous judging and corruption in boxing, which we all know, we're all familiar with. It's no secret. A lot of these boxing marquee fights are bought and paid for before they ever happen. That's just the reality of the matter. Unless, somebody gets knocked out, which how often does that happen at the highest level these days? It just disgusted me. And then the second fight I still watched it anyway. The second fight was pretty good. It was close and Canelo won. And then we waited, what was it? 5 years later, 3 years later, something between 3 and 5 years later, we do this. Gennady Golovkin's 40 years old. He was just not the same fighter anymore that beat Canelo in the first fight. And I'll maintain that forever. It was 4 years. So I was kind of right between 3 and 5. I nailed it. Yeah, the other thing that bothered me about this is like boxing fights just drag on so much. There's nothing worth watching on the undercards. It's not like UFC where you can watch top to bottom and there will be some excitement, some, level of competition. Like the boxing undercards is just, you got one group of cans against one group of people that are getting built up, and it's not really competitive. The matchmaking is not good. And then between the fight before the main event and the main event, you're looking at like 45 minutes. I was like, they do the national anthem from 62 countries. And then these guys take forever to walk out to the ring. And then the announcing, it's like midnight before these guys even are in punching distance of each other. I watched, I think, the first 5 rounds or so, and I was like, all right, I can see where this is going, and I shut it off. If any of you boxing nuts out there are offended, well, I don't know. Watch a more exciting sport. I don't know what to tell you. I couldn't get into it. I mean, it was, Canelo Alvarez, who's, clearly one of the greatest talents in the history of boxing, and still like pretty well within his prime against a guy who's 40 years old and like clearly at the end of his career. It was not something entertaining for me. It was not built up for me at all. I didn't even know the fight was happening until like last week. So, and this is coming from someone who has their ear to the streets when it comes to combat sports. So, I don't know. These big boxing fights are just they're disappointing. I've liked the Tyson Fury Deontay Wilder fights. Those have been good. But outside of that, there hasn't been a whole lot in boxing in the last like 5 years or so that's really grabbed my attention. It's been more negative than positive. And I'm always of the belief that once a relationship has more negative interactions than positive interactions, it's either time for a change or it's time to part ways with that relationship. And that goes with being a fan of a sport or a romantic relationship or a friendship, anything like that. Once there's more negative than positive, it's time to step back and maybe step away. So that's kind of where I'm at with boxing right now. I don't like dwelling on negative things. I don't like having negative thoughts. I don't like being a negative person. I don't like interacting with negative people. So that's where I am with boxing. I don't even know what the landscape of the division is like right now. Like who Canelo could even fight next. Like what were the implications of this fight? Like who's next in line? I don't feel like any of those questions were answered. I'm sure some of you have answers for that, but I don't. In any case, that's my rant for the day. MMA fights were great. And I couldn't stay awake for the boxing. So there was that. Let's see. If you guys want to grab some MMA on the Rocks merchandise, I would greatly appreciate it. And you can do so through our friends at Team Reaper. Reaper1.co is the website. You can use the promo code MMA Rocks 10. Save yourself 10% on your entire order. As always, I'll put the links in the show notes wherever you are watching or listening to purchase a over-the-top, under-the-influence tank top, hoodie, or sweatshirt. Or you can purchase whatever you want from their website. Get yourself some training gear or support a local fighter. Buy their t-shirt. Put a little food money in their pockets so they can keep training, keep a healthy diet, all that good stuff. By all means, get on there and do that. So there's that. And yeah, I'm really curious to hear your responses about, what you would choose given the choice between taking Song's cut and losing the fight as opposed to taking Rodriguez's cut and winning the fight. I've kind of been tossing this back and forth myself. I don't know which side of the coin I'm landing on yet. I might be leaning towards Rodrigues. That cut was pretty gruesome, though. He's never going to look the same. But he won. What do you guys think? All right. Pretty short episode this week. So that's all I got for now. Until next time. Cheers, everybody. Bye.